This ain't rock and roll. This is genocide. That's right. We're here. We're back. We're back, everybody. Welcome back to the show, where we do the Bowies.
That's it. Yeah, that's all. That's all we need to do.
Yep. I'm Dan the Tarek. We're gonna dive right into this because I have been waiting for as long as we've been talking about doing this podcast for this album to cross our doorstep. We're talking about David Bowie's legendary album Tonight. That's right. We're skipping his entire 70s career. My favorite album, Tonight, is what we're going to. That's a little inside baseball Bowie joke.
Yeah, and I still don't get them because.
Oh, you will. You will.
You got to make these jokes after I get them.
Nah, that's not as much fun.
I think I should decide what's fun.
But you do understand. Well, you have heard the reference to This Ain't Rock and Roll.
I have heard genocide. The reference. Because I still don't understand it necessarily, but
you understand it as much as anyone, and that's
all right. That's something.
That's all we need. That's right. We're talking about Diamond Dogs. This is you're good. These are words coming out of my mouth onto the microphone. We are going to talk about a little bit of history and background of the album Diamond Dogs. If you are new to this show, spoilers, I love it. I think Eric is at least tolerant of this album, but we'll find out as we go forward. If you're new to this podcast, this is a show where we listen to David Bowie albums in release order, and it's Eric's first time doing a deep dive. It is definitely not my first time. I've done this many times.
He's all the doves.
Yes, I've doven so many doves. Right.
This is how you start a show.
No, it's not.
Oh,
but
okay.
That's how we start this show.
Oh, okay.
Eric, any thoughts you want to before we get into the actual like? I have this weird feeling where it's like I've been waiting for this. And now it's here, and I don't know how to move forward.
You're ready to leap onto this grenade that has been sitting there in the middle of the room. The pin hasn't been pulled, but you're ready to jump right on top of it. Pull that pin and shield us all from danger.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a lot of the background that we're going to talk about here in this portion because I really don't know. Well, as we've established on the show, I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
But I am looking forward to understanding how we went from Contractual Obligation, the album, to an album that you consider to be a masterpiece in a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, ambition and being locked in a room for long periods of time with Mike Garson. That's a lot of it.
I also have questions about, what's up with side 2 being like, I mean, was he halfway through making a rock opera about
Orwell, let's start there.
And then he gave up? Or
we're going to start there. So just a little behind the scenes. I have about 30 pages of notes that I've condensed into 18 Jamboard slides, which are increasingly more manageable as we get through them. So I might be going back and forth. I kind of want to cover everything, but I also don't know that that's possible. So you kind of nailed it a little bit. David Bowie, Mr. Bowie, was most definitely looking at making a 1984 musical.
Oh.
So you totally
nailed he named one of the songs 1984.
Yeah, as the title song for everybody shows up. Hold on, I'm making a copy for patrons, even though this slideshow is not my best work. I'll try to gussy it up.
I'm having difficulty exporting the pinups version on PDF. I'm clicking download as PDF, but then I find it doesn't actually do that. So
we'll talk.
We'll get there
about this. You could just post I'm just making a copy of these, so you can just post the thing.
Okay,
we'll talk about it.
I've been posting PDF. Yeah, we're talking shop gear.
Yeah. You can just post the Google stuff, and I have. Anyway, you're absolutely right. He wanted to do a musical about Diamond Dogs, a musical based on 1984.
All those famous Diamond Dogs.
Yes, you can see here the set, Eric. You can see, you listening at home. You will be able to see if you access our slides. Or, I mean, you just do a Google search for Hunger City set design, because that's what this was. Mrs. or George Orwell didn't like the idea.
Oh.
I don't know how much of it was specifically no to you, Mr. David Bowie, or how much of it was like, look, this is a, treasured piece of literature. I'm not going to I'm not going to sign the rights away to really anyone. But yeah, he was denied that. He was actually kind of surprised because, here's this increasingly large mechanism behind him in the form of Main Man, aka Bad Tony, who seemingly can make anything happen, right? And he kind of expected them to just do whatever was possible to make it happen. And I don't know how much of this is they didn't really try as hard as he was hoping, or maybe he misunderstood how possible it was, but there was some disappointment / bitterness that he wasn't able to go through with this. But
interesting. So you're not, it's not quite so clear, like, it's not Bad Tony saying, of course you could do whatever you want, David. And when he hit a roadblock, he went, oh, well, I guess I can. Okay.
I think that at this point, Bad Tony's, again, we're in a really murky place, because I don't know exactly when the split between them is. I've tried to find it, and I know it probably exists out there somewhere, but right now it's like the missing link for me. All I know is like around this time they're having difficulty, and also around this time Bowie is, ingesting, most of Columbia into his left and right nostril. And so like,
did he have a preferred nostril, do you think?
I don't know. Have I told you? I don't know for sure, but have I told you my Stevie Nicks story?
The story about Stevie Nicks, the musician, or Stephen Nicks, your drugs man?
We don't do drugs. Stevie Nicks.
No, you don't buy drugs from him. He just tells you about drugs.
He's the drug man. Yeah. Stevie Nicks, the musician. I was at a bar in La Mesa, California. It's the Boulevard is the bar. If you've been there, you know how much of a lovely place it is. And I was talking to a lady outside the bar. My friend was having a cigarette break, and I was watching him have a cigarette break, as I sometimes have done. Really? And they knew each other, and they were talking, and she was, she was talking about how, like, oh yeah, I used to tour with Fleetwood Mac, and with Stevie Nicks specifically. Like, wow, that's awesome. What did you do? You like tambourine or something? And she's like, no, actually, I was Stevie Nicks' personal assistant for some time, and what my main job is I would procure cocaine for Stevie Nicks. And here's the part where it gets really fun. Apparently, Stevie Nicks had blown out her nose so thoroughly by doing so much cocaine that she had to. How would you imagine one would, and I'll say, consume cocaine if they could not do it through their nose? What other round? That's a hint.
No, no.
Usually smaller than a nostril.
There's so many.
How many?
So many.
How many ways can things get into the human body?
I don't want to put drugs in any of those.
Okay. Well, without being explicit, I then asked this woman if Stevie Nicks referred to it as her butt candy, because she would write it cocaine in the butt. That's what happened.
Oh
Butt
man!
candy.
I thought we were talking about ears.
No.
Okay.
And I have since been very amused, and I will sometimes do this just for my own amusement with Stevie Nicks. The idea of her saying Stevie needs her butt candy, but still pointing to her nose. Anyway, welcome to Bowiesplaining. This is the show where we talk about
everybody
albums. So anyway, that was happening. So Bowie kind of was in this place where he's like, I have all these really good ideas based on this book, but the book is kind of just, you can kind of tell the story without telling the story. So I still want to use the basic idea of like a dystopian, totalitarian, hellscape. So what if I just kind of twisted it a little bit and kind of made it my own thing that has definite ties to 1984, but isn't 1984 the musical. So we don't have any of the characters. We just kind of have the overall feeling of, good times and happiness that is associated with the novel 1984.
Right.
Eric, I'm going to ask you a really dumb question I probably know the answer to, but just so we're on the same page, you have read 1984, right?
Yes, indeed, I have.
Okay. Do you find it strange that it's... Okay. Do you find it, without taking into account my personality, do you find it strange that it's one of my favorite books?
I will.
Is there something wrong with me?
I will say no. I do not find it strange that it is one of your favorite books. I find it strange that you haven't mentioned it more directly in the past.
I don't like to talk about reading because you
don't like to give off the impression that you have read things.
I don't like it when people talk about things that they've read because it sounds pretentious. And I'm going to be really honest. I don't like reading. I know how to, but I don't like the actual act of doing it. And I have several times. But
if you have a favorite book, that's usually a good sign.
It's one of my favorites. I don't know what this link is, but okay. I know what that is now. So Bowie kind of went back to, okay, well, here are these, I can kind of just like add another layer of production onto kind of the thematic stuff that I'm already doing. So he definitely wanted to go forward with maybe not a musical, but a tour with musical flares. So here's like I said, the set design for the tour. I'm going to be doing a lot of flipping around because of just what this is to me. That
doesn't hurt my head at all. No, there we go.
They did some of the tour and not a lot exists in terms of footage. This is literally what you're looking at, Eric, is literally everything that I have found. And and there's not much, but you can kind of see that, the set design.
He made the model into a
real thing.
Okay.
There's a lot of disparate images that you can kind of piece together here and there to get an idea for kind of what it was. We'll talk more about that as we get to it. Giving you a little bit more historical background. And you said, I don't know if this was, I think this was after we pressed record, that you were wondering how we get from contractual obligation, the album, to
Artistic expression once again. Yes.
Artistic expression, the album. And I think a lot of that is necessity. I think that Bowie was definitely, he had established himself as a bona fide rock star, at least in Europe and to some extent in America. He wasn't an unknown, and Main Man, the company, is kind of not showing themselves to be the best company, and he's kind of thinking, the Ziggy Stardust thing, I've kind of done it. I don't really know where I want to go forward with this, but here's this musical idea that I can latch onto, and he gets really excited about it, and then that gets pulled from him. But in the meantime, he has all this experimentation going on, this these ideas. He's painting, he's drawing, he's really trying to get out of the Ziggy Stardust thing, also trying to break into the US market a little bit more, and trying to think, okay, how do I show that I'm, he's wanting to do more than just be a rock star, as we've talked about. He's trying to show that I'm actually a writer. I'm very intelligent. I can make these connections. I can produce a full ass production. I can come up with the design for this. I'm getting more comfortable as a producer, so I'm going to produce for myself. And at the same time, his management is really sucking. But they're really interested in promoting themselves more than anything. In fact, Bad Tony wants to create a roster of stars, sort of, as we've talked about. Mick Ronson releases his solo album. Here is track 2 from said solo album. I'm playing this one because Bowie wrote it and I believe appears on it. There he is, looking like Rod Stewart. This is Growing Up and I'm Fine. You're listening to Growing Up and I'm Fine by Mick Ronson. Traffic weather coming up next. You're listening to Bowiesplaining.
Always wound up in yourself for the night. Always had pains from a midnight fight. Always got caught by squad car light.
Okay.
The aesthetic around a lot of this, and I've been trying to think of a coherent way to get into this, but this is. Have you ever seen Phantom of the Paradise?
No.
Okay, I didn't expect anyone. I would never expect anyone to have seen that. But you know how there was that weird mid-70s period when in film and music to some extent where the movie version of Tommy came out and it has that certain mid-70s horror movie look, and same thing with there's a certain aesthetic to that time period. Carrie had this same aesthetic, that weird I don't know if it's the lighting or what. Maybe it could even be
lighting or film stock.
Maybe the film stock or whatever. There's something about that period that, and also there's shared aesthetics of we're going to have a lot of glass and plastic because it looks futuristic and everything. Where you can flip through the channels and you can land on TNT showing any one of these movies and you're that's a mid-70s horror movie. I know immediately. And then all of a sudden something bad happens. You're nailed it. Am I the only one with that feeling? Is that a real thing?
I know what you're
talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Not necessarily in terms of this song, but
the reason I mentioned that is
5 seconds we listened to. Well,
it does sound a bit like Phantom of the Paradise somewhat, but it also sounds a lot like Meatloaf to me, the musician, not the delicious food. The delicious food has a sound to it, but it's not musical. It's more of a mushy, putting your fingers into it or eating it. Anyway, here's more.
Now, we got a little of Monica love. The way she took me out.
see. Let's get a little more in there.
Okay.
Out is enough. Somebody's messing my brain. Going pain through. Got a little fun. Somebody's messing my
I'm pretty sure that's
brain.
Bowie in the background.
Going pain through. Got a little fun. Love. The way she took me out is enough. I'm glad.
So not the most noteworthy, but
Yeah.
you can kind of hear the like, oh, it's playing with some sounds that they've been messing with for some time.
Mhm.
Anyway, there's a huge promotional push for Mick Ronson's solo album, and David Bowie did not like that one bit, mainly because it kind of was becoming more and more clear that Bad Tony was in fact bad.
So Tony's trying to create the all-stars, and Bowie's like, but I'm the star.
I'm literally the person who is funding this, you know?
Right.
So huge promotional push. I don't know how much of it was Mick Ronson's idea, but I think the call is coming from inside the house at this point. And Bowie's pissed. He's also, it's kind of awkward because like he just kind of publicly fired everyone on stage, and he's thinking, okay, I want to move forward. I want to do these things. I want to do interesting things. Maybe I should just go forward on my own and only bring in the people who I absolutely need. Like I need a drummer. I'm going to need a bassist. I need Mike Garson. Because Mike Garson is kind of increasingly becoming Bowie's secret weapon to some extent. I don't know how much he knows that this is the case, but, and I was trying to find a clip of this. I know it exists somewhere because I watched it, but I couldn't find it. Recently, where Mike Garson's basically talking about, first of all, Mike Garson is a very talented musician, very important figure in this, but he's a very frustrating person to listen to me, because he does this thing where he's just like, yeah, I didn't even know who David Bowie was. I didn't know what rock was. It's like, okay, come on, douchebag. You know what a guitar is. Like, you didn't have no starting point. And he just like, he really likes to make these references of like, well, I was just hanging out in jazz clubs and I was jazz, classical, jazz, classical. It's like, okay, douchebag. Like, we get it. You're smart. Which is, again, it's kind of like why I don't like talking about reading. He's that guy. It's like, I read Dune and here's my thoughts on it. It's like, shut up.
We all read Dune. We all have none thoughts.
So that said, there, as obnoxious as he can be, he can be talking about these things, and I think any musician talking about their music falls into that trap, to be honest.
Assuming they've ever put thought into their music.
Right. They can all kind of go there, but this is all to set up the fact that Mick Ronson and David Bowie spent a lot of time talking to each other about shared references, about their interests. Mike Garson's not looking to be his friend, not looking to be his friend, but this is a gig for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of seeing this person has a lot of potential, but maybe a little rough around the edges musically, which is totally fine. We're not going to we're not trying to change each other musically, but we have some shared points of contact, some shared interests, or sometimes, Bowie, he was a reader, a constant reader, and he was very interested in all of these different things, different art movements, different literary movements. And, Mike Garson has a classical and jazz education, so he's able to catch on ice cream trucks going by the neighborhood, everybody.
Woo! Bomb pop for me, please. Unless they have the Ninja Turtles with the gumball eyes.
I'm just going to let it happen. I'm not cutting that out.
Not easy to hear.
Okay. Right. So,
but they've also, on the topic of Garson Bowie, they've already collaborated. They've done some interesting things together. So sure, they've
Right.
got their shared interests and things to discuss, but they have created some things that are an interesting blend.
And there's definitely there's really a shared appreciation for each other's background, where Mike
Mhm.
Garson is able to look at what Bowie's doing. He's like, okay, I see how this connects to my background, but I'm not going to try to like teach him how to do like a Baroque fugue, but they exist, and maybe I can do a fugue-ish sort of harpsichord thing in one of the tracks in the album we're about to talk about, for example. So they're sitting in studios together, and they love talking about music. And Mike Garson's like, oh, so it's sort of like I guess an example of the kind of conversations would be like, Bowie would be like, I'm thinking about doing a musical with this, and I'm going to be doing some expressionistic things based on Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and whatever. And Garson would be able to go like listen to that and go like, oh, have you listened to this opera?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
feed into it, get the
Yeah.
reference, and then take it to the next step.
right. So there's definitely a back and forth, especially in this period, because Bowie's knowing that he knows he's capable of doing more. He knows he's capable of presenting something that will blow people's minds. He just doesn't know exactly what that looks like. So he's following the interests, and bloody, let's move forward. A lot of collaborations going on during this time. Again, I mentioned Bowie appeared on Ronson's album. He was hanging out a lot with Ava Cherry. They dated to whatever extent Bowie like officially dated anyone at this time period. Very, very mutual appreciation sort of stuff again. And she sees that he's interested in soul and funk, and that's kind of something that she's more intimately familiar with. So where he's able to say like, hey, I'm listening to this entry level, musician, she's able to go like, oh, have you listened to this like more actually into the weeds sort of musician? And he's getting sort of an education in that, and but it's not like, I want to do soul, can you teach me soul? It was just like, I'm very interested in this music, and
she happens to be the right person to hook up with.
Yeah.
At that time. Okay.
So there's that. I'm going to get some water. Eric, if you want to fill the silence, feel free. Otherwise, I will make an edit.
Oh, he's not actually going. That's right, because he already got the water. He's just drinking the water right now. Okay. I can fill that kind of silence. I was going to say, if he's going to leave the room, that's just too much silence to fill. Because then Dan can't respond to it. But he can respond to the things that I've said right there, because it's just me talking about him drinking water.
This break was brought to you by Water and Silence. So, yeah, that's happening. I believe he also... Yes, he did. Hold on. Another thing I'm probably going to edit. Cherry Laser. He wrote some songs for various people, including Ava Cherry. This one becomes a track later on, and you may or may not recognize it because it's going to be several albums from now, but there's a little track called I Am a Laser by Ava Cherry. Don't forget, we have a request line opening up. You can make requests. It's a new idea. That's right. Sorry, everybody. I learned in DJ school to never talk over the lady
The word
singing.
parts.
I'm also getting a note from my producer that we are not the first station to have a call-in dedication. In fact, I don't actually work here. The DJ who is supposed to be here is tied up in the corner right now, and I'm about to torture him. Here, save a chair.
Not torturing with Ava Cherry.
No. With a series of cherries that with a series of cherries that I'm going to throw at him violently.
I saw him by the DJ. The way he danced was cool. They said that I stood no chance.
The track that this eventually becomes in several albums is "Scream Like a Baby." I'll remind you when we get to it.
Okay. I look forward to that. How's that torture going?
The police are on their way. I gotta go. All right. He also worked with Lulu, who is a person, not a band. Also, a hotel close to Disneyland Resort, which I hear is very nice to stay at. Hotel Lulu. He collaborated with them. They made a couple songs. Some of them are "Take It Right," which later turned into what? Hold on. Which is okay. Right.
Just reading notes here, folks. Notes he wrote.
I can't do both. So some of these songs turn into tracks for the next album, and you're going to get a lot of like thematic ideas about what the next album is like, even though I'm not going to straight up tell you because it's more fun if you don't know.
Okay.
He was
That's what's fun about the show.
Right.
At least for me.
Right. I do think though, after this episode, without me giving any explicit hints, you might be able to guess where we're going next, but we'll do that on side B. He also hung out with Keith Richards. He was hanging out with the Rolling Stones a lot, but specifically with Keith Richards, who, you know, when you're entertaining the possibility of leaning into your drug addiction, maybe not the best person to hang out with. But, you know,
Keith Richards, a famous druggist.
Yes. I mean,
Yes.
this train has already left the station to where it's going to go, and there are no surprises going forward. He also hung out with Keith Harwood, was an engineer, and he worked with Bowie on the track Future Legend. And Keith Harwood was
Famous collector of random noises on tape.
Was he?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I just wanted to try to do a parallel to the Keith Richards thing.
Got it.
And I figured when you said future song name, that had a lot of sounds on it.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Now I've explained the joke, and thus it is funny.
Welcome to being me, Eric. We haven't really gotten a lot into the personality of Ken Scott, but we've talked about him, and Eric, just to make it more of a conversation than me doing professor time. What is your impression of Ken Scott, like personality wise, so far? If you have one. He's the producer guy.
Okay, there we go. That helps. I'm like, there have been a lot of names.
He's the producer guy that worked with mainly started with Hunky Dory and worked through pinups without really being paid for it.
Let's see. So we've listened to some of his interviews and such, right?
You're allowed to not have an answer. I'm just trying to.
I don't know. He seemed like a nice guy. I guess that's kind of my. I don't have enough of an impression in my head. I don't. He doesn't seem like a crazy person to me. Maybe.
Yeah. That's kind of
seems like kind of a professional who's like, oh yeah, I worked with David Bowie.
He's just a regular, nice dude. He's
Oh, look at him.
he's Gampa, you know? He's
Yeah.
just-
Okay. Okay. I'm remembering. Yeah.
he's a guy that he can do the job. He knows how to knob the knobs, but he's like, he's going to show up. He's going to do the job, and he's going to not be, you know,
he's not going to pull a gun on anybody.
right. He's not going to be an insane person. So imagine you're David Bowie and you're thinking like, I want to find a real rock producer. That's Keith Harwood rather. Keith
Okay.
Harwood is basically, he's the guy that, like, if you call the central casting and you said, I want a really, really sleazy, like cocaine addled mid-70s producer, basically like for my mid-70s horror movie, then this is who they send. They send Keith
Okay.
Harwood.
All right.
So right, that's fun. We kind of talked about this. There's a lot of other influences going on. Let's see. I'm just going to pick one. So Bowie says, okay, 1984 musical's not happening. He's inspired by this idea that gets in his head, which is about Hunger City. It's again, not character based. It's based on this idea that we're in this place, where he's imagining teen punks living on rooftops in like a post-apocalyptic landscape. He's
That explains a little bit. My main impression early on, like starting to think about these songs, was, so did 5 years happen? Like, did Ziggy not save us?
I think that's a good place to go with it, but I don't think that it's a direct connection. I think
Okay.
Bowie's a lot like, I'm just going to go with it. He's very similar to David Lynch in the sense that you kind of know that you're dealing with a David Lynch movie as soon as you watch a David Lynch movie, and you kind of know the tropes, you know, the shorthand that he's going to use.
Mhm.
And he does that without it feeling samey. It's more just like, oh, this is from this person. And Bowie's kind of entire career, I would argue at its best, is when you're able to arrive at it and go, okay, this is going to be a lot of like isolation, a lot of alienation, a lot of like the worst possible things that can happen to a person are happening. Society is in disrepair. Everything's hopeless and awful. And it's going to be just a lot of fun to listen to where he goes with it. And I mean that literally. And I think that's he's kind of like, he's discovering I do have an aesthetic. And these are kind of the areas that I tend to hang out in. And I'm just going to kind of do that. He's also really inspired, like I said, by Cabinet Dr. Caligari, Kurt Weill, who was a play person. He was a musician. It's a composer. That's what that's called. He's the guy
that type.
He's the guy that did Mac the Knife, not Mac Tonight. He was kind of known for dealing in that murky, dark place, thematically, lyrically, what have you. He was also really drawn. These are all people he's been drawn to for a while, but now he's feeling more comfortable. He's feeling like, okay, I'm gonna kind of become the person that I'm gonna become. He's leaning in more on these influences. Another one is Brecht.
Bertolt
Brecht. And here's a little short story or are you familiar with If Sharks Were Men?
I am not familiar with that. No.
Okay. I don't know how far I'm going to get into this, but here we go. This is by Bertolt Brecht. If sharks were men, Mr. Cooner was asked by his landlady, his little girl, would they be nicer to the little fishes? Certainly, he said. If sharks were men, they would build enormous boxes in the ocean for the little fish, with all kinds of food inside, both vegetable and animal. They would take care that the boxes always had fresh water, and in general, they would make all kinds of sanitary arrangements. If, for example, a little fish would injure a fin, it would immediately be bandaged, so it would not die and be lost to the sharks before its time. so that the little fish would not become melancholy, there'd be big water festivals from time to time because cheerful fish taste better than melancholy ones. There would, of course, also be schools in the big boxes. In these schools, the little fish would learn how to swim into the shark's jaws. They would need to know geography, for example, so that they could find the big sharks who lie idly around somewhere. The principal subject would, of course, be the moral education of the little fish. They'd be taught that it would be the best and most beautiful thing in the world if a little fish sacrificed itself cheerfully, and that they all had to believe the sharks, especially when the latter said they were providing for a beautiful future. The little fish would be taught that this future is assured only if they learned obedience. The little fish had to beware of all base, materialist, egotistical, and Marxist inclinations.
Those Marxist fish are.
And if one of their number
worst.
betrayed such inclinations, they had to report it to the sharks immediately. You kind of get where this is going, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's
He kind of played his hand early with the taste of the fish, but you know.
yeah. So there's this. It's kind of like it's playful, but it's also we're definitely talking about some stuff that's messed up. He also had plans for multiple TV projects. None of this came to fruition, mainly because management is like kind of crumbling beneath him. And again, I don't know how much of this is by choice and how much of this is not. Did that one. So because we do Disney related podcasts, I just wanted to include that sort of like Walt Disney, he's kind of establishing himself or trying to establish himself as someone who pushes the medium and is doing interesting things, even though I don't believe he has ever been a fan of Disney or the Walt Disney Company. And in general, and this is the album where this line in the sand starts getting drawn a little bit. People generally are either able to go with him and be like, yeah, this is interesting. And for some people, it's just really inaccessible. So good/bad news is however you feel about this album is kind of how you might feel about the rest of his career.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing I enjoyed it. And it's
Okay,
a good
good.
thing that, yeah, I can see these. You're laying out exactly what I was hoping you would, which is where he's coming from. And he's back to showing off a little bit that intelligence.
Yes.
Where we talked, I remember it was one of those things that caught me the very first episode. Well, I guess the very second episode that we did when we were talking about Ziggy Stardust. And I made some comments saying it sounds like this guitar riff is the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And your response was, you know what? I've never thought of that before, but he's an awfully smart person, so it sure could be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that sort of thing keeps popping into my head. These licks that I hear, these riffs, it's like, no, this is he's definitely using this style in this song. He wants this shift in tone. He wants this shift in tension. He wants shift in tension and intention. That was a happy coincidence there. But he has crafted this. It's not let's sit down and do a bunch of songs.
Exactly. And I think another piece to that too is that he's very big on experimentation and using the mistakes if they're interesting mistakes. So like it's all crafted, but not micromanaged, which is a really, really wonderful balance, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. He was getting increasingly paranoid due to his addiction, and this was kind of mirrored in the album's themes and production.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know if this album would be as good if he wasn't also in some kind of like personal and professional disarray, to be honest. There's more.
Wow.
I don't want to, again, we did a lot of drug talk last episode. I don't want to get too into this, but this is kind of what this time period is at the same time. Here is him in the 90s talking.
It was playful and it was
about his addiction.
was camp and it was just over the top with Ziggy. But as drugs started to take a more severe hold on my life, the ability within your conscious mind to actually deliver yourself into two separate parts disappears, and the lines blur, and it's only this one formless mutant that's left behind. So it gets quite messy in there. It gets very messy in there. And by the mid-70s, I was so out of my gourd that really it was very impossible. It was all nigh on impossible for me to function in any rational way. So I didn't know I was playing characters at that time.
So I really like the formless mutant thing, because I think that is definitely, I think this album captures that really, really well. So yes, he was without a guitarist, and he decided, for whatever reason, possibly, I think there's a combination of choice and chance, where Main Man is having difficulty securing things, including studio time, because here's the note right here. Because they were basically kicked out of several studios because they wouldn't pay the fees. Funny how that works. So he's kind of realizing that, like, okay, the ground is shifting from under me. I need to, at the very least, figure out a way to do this on my own. And he figured, well, I might be able to play lead guitar on an album, but if I'm going to do this, I want to do it extremely well. So he was practicing a ton, practicing hours a day, daily, and knowing that he couldn't get to be super proficient, but also knowing that he could get himself to a place, sort of like how he plays the saxophone. It's like he's not the first person you think of when you say, I need a saxophone player.
Right.
But when he picks up a saxophone and he plays it, you can tell by the way he plays it that it's him. And that's kind of his career. That's what he has wanted, is I want to be able to do something well enough that it works, but also find my own way to do it so that kind of helps it work more. At the same time, he's kind of reluctant to work with other musicians because he's a little bit embarrassed about, not being the best guitarist. So he's very, at this point in time, again, some of this might be due to his mental state. He is really very picky about working with anyone, let alone who he works with.
And he's alienated some of the people that he used to have the best relationship with and
Right.
worked well with. And
so a lot of the development of this album is him and Mike Garson just hanging out in studios and trying things out, seeing what happens, and occasionally bringing in, like I was saying, bringing a bassist or another guitarist to, have what are some like riffs that I can use. But for the most part, this is all DIY. And even though he's increasingly cold and impersonal and burning a lot of bridges with mainly the people who want to have a personal connection with him while working, or are used to. And this is again why I think the relationship with Mike Garson works, because he wasn't there to be his friend. He was there to be a pianist.
now I get it.
Those bridges are burning, and he's kind of like, all right, well, I got my Mike Garson, and that might be all I really need, and we could just get hired guns for the other things.
Okay.
He's playing a lot with Mellotron and electronics, and getting very interested in that. He's listening to some German experimental stuff, very kind of inspired by some of the noise music happening there. So yeah, that was a duplicate. Let's see. Yep, done. Yep. And you could see from pictures of him. Let's see. Let's look at some pictures.
Yeah, what's some pictures at the time? You're saying he's looking increasingly fragile, which certainly is something that's happening if you're ramping up your metabolism quite a bit and probably not eating well, because
There's a good one.
you don't need to.
Let's see. He's not doing well, let's say. And he's kind of, even in the industry, I'm remembering this from something I read years ago, because I can read, I just don't like to. He's kind of becoming a little bit of not joke. People are kind of openly concerned about him. And people are, at some point, I forget who wins an award, and they said, I'm so ecstatic I could kiss David Bowie. And it was kind of like, he was kind of like a Marilyn Manson figure at this time, because he was scary. Yeah, he looked scary. He had a reputation, and it's like, who is this dude? I think maybe he might eat me, and he's kind of just leaning into that at the same time, because that is absolutely his aesthetic of like glamorous and disgusting at the same time. So it's a little bit of a feedback loop there, I suspect. Anyway, even though this is all happening, he still has a really, really strong connection to his fan base, mainly through performances, and just people knew that if you go to see a David Bowie concert, he's going to be super charismatic, charming, and play these songs and do all these weird chicken dance moves that he does. Like that right here. There's a chicken dance.
Oh.
I have a video to show you later when we get to later in his later career that is entirely chicken dance based. If you know, you know. Let's see.
And I don't. But I'm imagining
Here, I'm gonna look it up. Chicken.
Oh no.
Chicken Man. It's the Chicken Man. Hold on. Chicken Man. I don't know if it's a thing, but you know what? I'm just gonna do it.
That's what you call it, or is this?
Oh no, this is the internet has referred to it as it's a dance move that I think comes from mime. Bowie.
Now I'm just imagining him walking around like a chicken, but maybe somehow fashioning it into dance David Byrne style. I don't know.
We're just gonna jump ahead. Here we go.
Uh-oh. That's
this is This is from the Glass Spider tour. I'll just let you, Eric, guess how I feel about this period that we're watching. Here we go. There, he's a
wow. They're all doing it.
Yep. Just go to YouTube and type in Bowie Chicken Man.
That was special, and that was the kind of rendition of Fame that I can only imagine you enjoy more than.
Oh my goodness! I mean,
your druthers.
I am in some ways looking forward to us getting to the 80s period, but I'm really looking forward to getting out of it at the same time.
Oh my goodness! So that answers some questions already that I didn't know I had. Like, did Bowie get into synchronized dancing with backup dancers? And
well, actually, that was part of the plan for this show. Oddly enough, is that they did for at least the first leg of the tour. Have synchronized dance moments, but I suspect that they were more mime, based.
Okay.
I don't know what's on the next slide, do you have any questions currently?
Yes, the
Yes.
picture,
You in the front.
the image in the center
Uh-huh.
of this slide
Uh-huh.
of a mime-looking man and a dog leaping.
The dog was
Okay.
apparently out of control. Just he was you deal with dogs.
I know dogs.
This was apparently a young dog, and it was just like not vicious, but you know dogs when they're just like not well trained and kind of out of control, and you're trying to like make them do something.
Trying to look like a cool mime man
Right, and
or mannequin man.
I think that I suspect that Bowie's way of playing this off was to kind of just go, okay, well, if I just give the opposite energy of this dog that's leaping and barking and angry, or seemingly angry and seemingly dangerous, if I just give off this, I'm just going to hold on to the leash and I'm just going to be as calm as possible and let the handler deal with the dog. It became this pretty iconic image that was included in the album of Diamond Dogs of him in his Halloween Jack Best. That's a character from Diamond Dogs. We'll get into that.
Okay. That answers a question.
Yeah. By the way, the picture we're looking at was included in the album at some point. The book that I believe it's a Metropolis book, a book about Metropolis or something. What is it? We can zoom in because he likes to give us little Easter eggs. Oh, come on. Copy. It's not worth it. Let's see.
Okay, so this is a photo shoot that became a painting. Like the artist was using real photography to create these images.
Funny you should mention that because I have a whole lot on.
Oh no. Oh no.
This picture that we're looking at is thanks to the internet. So the album artwork was made by some guy. His name's Guy.
If he's Belgian, it's probably Guy.
Guy. How would you pronounce that if it's Belgian? Pielert? Pielert?
I'm not sure.
Whatever the hell.
Belgian's kind of Frenchish.
Okay. That doesn't help. I'm terrible at French.
Okay.
Guy, fuck it. You created the cover and it features the picture that you have seen with the dog wiener of Bowie as a half man, half dog creature. The pose itself, this was created, hold on, Diamond Dogs. This was created by a composite that I did see pictures of, but might not be available to us currently. So basically, Guy took this picture of Bowie laying. I imagine it's something like this one. He's laying down, and he's saying, "Turn me into a doggy," and then the artist then like taped a picture of dog wiener and on the other part and just kind of like painted from there. So there's that. Bowie himself was inspired by a picture of Josephine Baker from 1926. Let's see if this gets us there.
By the way, the animation for this album cover on Apple Music is much less inspired. It's pretty much just zooming in and out.
Yeah, this is
slowly.
This is where we kind of get people are not really sure what to do with him at this point.
They're like,
and it's wonderful. In fact, I did include some samples and covers for this album, and I thought for sure, because there's so many nerds out there who love this album with such depth, and I'm one of them, who would be like, oh, okay, I'm going to sample the hell out of this.
My own art.
Yeah, well, why I thought for sure there would be just a ton of, if not covers, because I mean, how do you cover some of these songs? But like samples. Because like,
Okay.
I
I
wouldn't
see.
it be cool to have like samples from like having a sample from certain moments of Sweet Thing would be like, I know exactly what that is, you know.
Right.
But it just doesn't exist. There's not a lot. I mean, there's some, and we'll get to it. But this is kind of the place again with Bowie where it's like, okay, you're either into it or you're not, and no one really knows how to touch it because it's pretty good. I'm assuming that this is going to be a good place to cut back because I think we were talking about the imagery, but I could be wrong.
We were.
Okay. So RCA initially thought that having Dog Wiener on the album was not going to be a problem, but then
yeah. Well, I mean, it was the 70s.
right. But then they were like, why risk it? So
my instincts have never been wrong before when it comes to dog wieners.
Yeah, they were like, it's probably going to be okay, but yeah, we could just edit it, and why not?
But it's on like the back cover, so I could see why. Like, right? Like it's a gatefold, like it's on the back of the gatefold.
Right. So they, just to play it safe, they said, yeah, let's censor it. And Bowie was like, yeah, that's probably the right call.
Okay.
So not a big deal. He's generally not an asshole about these things.
I'm going to look up while you're talking. I'm just going to let you know what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how much an unairbrushed cover goes for.
Oh my God. Let me know. So the album also had a pretty big push. The ad budget was $400,000 in 1974 money. That'd be $14 million.
Ooh.
So that's not a small amount
That's quite a bit
of ad budget. I don't know what this is, but we're going to click the link and see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is,
Hello.
this is him talking. This, by the way, his appearance on Dick Cavett is wonderful because Dick Cavett just was a really good interviewer, and it's nice to see.
We have a very vocal group here tonight. Not only you, but the people out there. It's strange to see you off your feet like this. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So you've got
I included this as an example of his promotional thing, not necessarily the cover art.
a lot of explaining to do.
Yes.
I feel like I always feel I should interview like that character Peter Cook does, you know? What is all this prancing about as stage and trappings and all of that? But you don't have the trappings that you've had in the past. You're a little more conventional.
Yeah, at this moment.
What happened?
We did the Diamond Dogs tour and took it from New York to Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that was enough, really. Rather than come back with the same thing, I wanted to give myself an opportunity just to work with the band.
Yeah. So a lot of the glitter is gone that we associate with you, and you've got an entirely new person now.
No, you haven't.
Où sont les glitz de yesteryear, or something like that. Is the offstage Bowie likely to surprise people? I've had the weirdest reactions from people who know you're going to be on. Some of them say they'd be scared to sit and talk with you. Some people said you would bite my neck.
It's not
very peculiar kind of thing.
It's what you want, really, isn't it? And what do you think I'm like?
Well, I've only met you over the phone and a little bit backstage, and to me you seemed like, I hope this doesn't insult you, a working actor.
That's right, that's very good.
You know, I mean, what are you drawing?
It's therapeutic.
No, you know, some people thought, there's a lady who said, I don't know if I'd want to meet him. He would make me very nervous. I have a feeling he's into black magic and that sort of thing. And other people see you as just a very skillful performer who changes from time to time from one thing to another.
Yeah. Well, both of that is...
All of the above?
Both. We have both of those.
Finally, a little personality there, other than the constant sniffing.
Yeah, and that's the really amazing thing about it's one of the many amazing things about this guy is that like he was so funny even during these like weird periods. He just didn't really he's just uncomfortable. It's just not really didn't really know how to express that side of himself, but it comes out every now and then. And especially like in this interview, Dick Cavett, I don't know if it's this clip or not, but Dick Cavett asks him, I've heard that you're like a voracious reader. What's your favorite book? And Bowie's like, you mean currently or what? It's like, yeah, currently. He goes, well, I just finished reading your book and it's great. Dick Cavett's like, I don't have a book. It's like, oh, okay.
Zing.
Yeah. And this is highly visual, but it's also really short. So here's the ad for Diamond Dogs, the album.
Diamond Dogs,
Diamond Dogs by Bowie. Available on RCA Records and Tapes worldwide. Diamond Dogs by Bowie. A Main Man production.
Interesting. So I haven't noticed that. Bowie, not David.
Right. This
Bowie.
is I believe was Pinups. I think Pinups was the first one where it was just Bowie.
Huh. Okay,
But
I missed that.
Yeah, he's doing this is Bowie. He's Bowie. He's not David Bowie, he's Bowie. And that's where we get, the shorthand that we currently use. He eventually drops that bullshit, but people kind of stick with it. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah,
It's really hard finding original. There's so much. I'm getting actual like Diamond Point butter dishes when I'm looking for. eBay, you're not helping me here.
So you asked before about the creatures behind him on the cover art.
Yes.
Those were Alzoria Lewis and Joanna Dickens, who were performers in the Cavalcade Variety Show at Coney Island Pleasure Park. They were in the sort of show that they had at Coney Island in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we can find pictures. There they are.
That particular image that you had made them look more like they had been afflicted by Jack Nicholson's Joker's Joker Venom.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's just because their eyes are cut out.
Yes, and there's more Joker lipstick on them.
Okay, so like classic carnival sideshow,
right?
Problematic.
Yeah, definitely.
Ish.
And this is where he's going with all of this. He's very inspired by, Todd Browning and just all. I guess where I'm trying to go with this is he's very clearly not being like, look at these freaks. It's more just like, this is kind of the moral decay that's at the heart of the world of Hunger City.
Interesting. Well, and I'm looking at the complete cover now, and behind him, he's got Strangest Living Curiosities. So
right.
He's counting himself as part of that, being
totally.
half man, half dog.
Yes. I think we have some
an airbrushed cover, so I'm uninterested. Okay, eBay.
It's funny because I was just about to say that I think I don't know what's in the next slide, but I think we have some good groundwork to just talk about the music now. And then, sure enough, boom, there it is.
Oh.
So before we end side A, do you have any more side A related things that you would like to talk about? Not that they're off limits going forward, but
no. I think most of my we did a quicker turnaround this time, so I spent a little less time with the album than I often do. Although it's a fairly short album, but yeah, I don't have a whole lot more. You covered a lot of interesting things that are kind of, like I have already said, answered a few questions I already had. But Yeah, I even most of my first impressions are things that I'm sure we'll talk about plenty. Yeah, just keep zooming zooming right in there. Oh, that is a disturbing alternate image. Is that like a
It is.
postcard up for the album or
This is
something?
just DeviantArt being DeviantArt, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, we're kind of at that place where, and I've talked about this before, where the side A content is almost like you kind of already knew, like you might not have had all the facts, but when you hear it, you're like, that makes sense.
Right.
And also we're getting to a place where it really is just, I mean, we're almost across the threshold, at least for the next couple albums, of where is he recording, who is he recording with, how short of a turnaround time was there, and
How much Bad Tony?
where's Bad Tony, and how much cocaine is he doing? Does he remember recording this album? Like that's kind of, I mean, there's also a lot of wacky stories involving witches and milk and peppers and everything,
And Mellotrons.
that we'll get into in future albums. But for right now, we are ready to go forward with side B of Diamond Dad.